Hi, and welcome to week two, Understanding Old Testament Narrative, part one. So it is clear that this is a very bright class and very engaged class, which I really appreciate. And it also looks like I've got some internet slowness, so we'll see how this comes out. But I wanted to introduce week two, give you a few guidelines on what I'm looking for this week out of the assignments. And just as importantly, one note to start with, actually a couple of notes to start with, and they were in your week one wrap-up video as well. First, whether it's a list assignment or any kind of assignment, always include an introduction and a conclusion. I included that in your week one introduction on assignment 1-1, or sorry, 1-2. And many folks did not include that in their assignment. I noted it this week, but I will begin to count off in week two because every assignment is more than just list something or explain something. It's important to give an introduction as to why you think we're doing the assignment, what you hope to gain, and then in the conclusion, summarize your findings and be able to give some personal reflection on what you might think of what you have learned or discussed. Also, so that's note one. Note two, always include references from the Bible and from the reading in your assignments. That helps to give breadth and support, evidence essentially, of what you're thinking and why you conclude what you conclude. And then third, just a real technical item, but one that as young Bible scholars, and whether that's young in age or young in tenure, be sure to always capitalize Bible. It is a book, it is a title of that book, and so it needs to be capitalized. However, biblical is not capitalized. And then a final note is be sure to use a consistent form of citation, whether that is Turabian or APA or whatever system of citations you're using. If you quote something, cite it. Okay, so on to week two. Our goals this week are to apply interpretive methods in the evaluation of a narrative text. So we're now going to begin to look at what could be called stories. In scholarship, we call them narratives because story has a connotation of not being true. Narrative is a story that has the connotation of being true. So we call them a narrative text as opposed to a story, but either term really applies. And we're going to look at how, as scholars, we should interpret them and analyze them. Second goal is to develop a personal interpretive methodology for analyzing biblical narrative. So as you move forward from this class and you see narrative, which is the vast majority of the Bible, how are you going to approach an interpretation of that narrative? And then finally, to evaluate the tension between divine inspiration and classic narrative storytelling. And that's the idea of God working through an author to provide a narrative, be that a fictional narrative or a historical narrative, but always with a point, versus reading Shakespeare, which is narrative storytelling. And how do we interpret God's narrative versus secular narrative in different ways, or should we? Should we interpret both in the same manner? So assignment 2.1 is a word study, and because as you begin to develop a interpretive methodology, one of the first things you're going to want to do is look at what key words are repeated or what important words are included in the narrative, and then truly understand the range of meaning in the Bible so that you can get as close to the Hebrew as possible in your understanding. Now, in Genesis 1:26, we have the word likeness, where mankind is created in the image and likeness of God. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean we look like God? we're in the image of God? Is that the, with faces and hands and other things? Or is it mental image of God? Is it the emotional image of God? What actual image and likeness do we have? Well, one way to begin to interpret that very difficult phrase is to really understand what the Bible means by the two Hebrew words that are used, tselem and demut. So after reading the Word Study Resource Guide, and I've also included a video on how to complete a word study, I want you to complete a word study using some online concordances at BibleStudyTools.com and BibleHub.com. Now, if you have another resource like Word or, I'm blanking on the name of the other one. It'll come to me in a second. But if you have other paid-for online sources or paid-for programs that will help, feel free to use them. Just be sure to, Logos is the other one I was thinking of. Just be sure to cite where you got your information. So I want you to look up all the instances of likeness, which is demut in Hebrew, in the Bible, and word study assignment provided. So there are multiple steps that I'm wanting you to go through to complete your word study. So follow the resource guide and evaluate the word as it is used throughout the Old Testament, with a particular emphasis on its use in Genesis 1:26, concluding with a paragraph explaining the range of meaning for the word and its most likely understanding in Genesis 1:26. So that assignment takes some time and some effort to do well, and it is due next Monday at midnight. Now, our second assignment this week, assignment 2.2, is an essay. After completing the reading incline, write a 2 to 3 page paper summarizing the proper way to conduct a contextual study of a passage. Be sure to include a discussion of the historical cultural context and include a conclusion reflecting upon the importance of understanding the context of a passage in your hermeneutical methodology. So to me, context is one of the most important places to spend time when understanding the meaning of a text. So we want to know what's going on in the background, what historical events are taking place leading up to this narrative that we're reading about. Now, in a 2 to 3 page paper like this, I'm looking for quotes from your reading that support your analysis of how to do a contextual study. And then I'm looking for at least one, if not multiple examples from the Bible where a contextual analysis helps you understand the meaning. So in assignment 2.2, I'm looking for an introduction, a conclusion, a body, in the body, evidence from the reading, evidence from the Bible, and then a conclusion that brings it all together and tells me how you would complete your study. And then finally, we have a discussion looking at scriptural authority and whether it is diminished by doing a more secular study of the Bible or of how narrative or storytelling might be understood. So in your opinion, does the biblical author's use of narrative components like plot, character development, dialogue diminish the authority of Scripture? And then I want you to explain your answer. Now, I'm assuming most of you are going to say, well, I don't know what most of you are going to say. Some might say yes, some might say no, so I'm not going to answer that. But after finishing your first post, provide a response to at least 2 of your peers that considers the following: what factors or angles might they have missed, and what would you add? And after considering these questions, help them to answer the following: how was their perspective helpful, keen, or correct? And do you agree or disagree, and how? And as I've mentioned in other videos, it is really important to me that you conduct ongoing discussion, dialogue with other students over the course of the weekend. I think that is a great way to grow and learn. And I was really delighted with most students this weekend that engaged multiple times as I was checking in, and I appreciate that and want you to continue. If you didn't do it in week 1, likely your grade reflected that lack of dialogue, and I'll look forward to your engagement in week 2. But going back, I'm going to just check in. Going back to scriptural authority, some might say that absolutely it does not, that God is working through the author, and the author is using classically understood storytelling in order to present God's point. Some might say that if, in fact, God has laid upon someone's heart to write a narrative, and in that narrative, the dialogue is altered in any way or contrived in any way, then it would diminish the scriptural authority. So really it's, can God inspire someone to write a story that is storytelling, where the person has crafted the narrative, perhaps not entirely accurately as far as historically, but entirely accurately as God laid upon the heart of the author. So what I'm trying to get to is, does story or does narrative have to be factually accurate? And that's really at the root of this question, is can God inspire someone to write a story that is not based in truth? Tough question, and look forward to your thoughts. Okay, so last thoughts, be sure to put your name in the file name of assignments. Call me or email me with questions. I'm back in Antigua. My U.S. phone does work here, and I check email multiple times a day. So I'm excited about the class, glad we've gotten started. We're now beginning to kind of dive into the meat of the topics and look at narrative and how we're going to interpret it throughout the Old Testament. Have a great day.